Some people are just being made aware of it. Some have known and celebrated it throughout the years, even before it became a national holiday. But Dr. Ann, she knows, and something that she's very familiar with, and she's going to share with us this morning.
Good morning, Journey Center. Hopefully, y'all can hear me. Um, and hopefully, Buffy wants to learn about Juneteenth too versus barking. So thank you, Bishop, for giving me the opportunity to share. But I do want to start off by just saying, like, those Father Day reflections were amazing. Amazing. And I tell people all the time, like, I look at Father's Day as a day of also reconciliation and forgiveness for those who possibly did not even weren't raised with their fathers. I knew who my dad was. I wasn't raised with him, but got to meet him and know him and take care of him before he passed away. And that was one of the biggest and best blessings of my life was reconciling that relationship with my dad. But yeah, had plenty of uncles and cousins who I thought were my cousins or uncles. It doesn't matter. They were my village, and it take a village to raise this one. So I am Dr. Amory Edwards, and I currently serve as the director of the Center for Black Studies on the campus of Northern Illinois University. And we are a multifaceted center that is home to both an academic component as well as a programming and student support arm. And I want to talk about Juneteenth, right? Because let's be clear. I did not grow up celebrating Juneteenth. If you were here and celebrating Juneteenth, please raise your hand, right? And because I'm curious myself of how many people actually even knew what Juneteenth was. Um, when they heard that it was going to become a federal holiday. It's interesting. And probably if you were in Texas or even perhaps California or in those Western states, you would probably know more. Or if your people were from those areas, you would probably know more about Juneteenth than anyone else. So today I'm going to give you a brief history of the occasion, the significance of it, and really talk about how it's celebrated. Because I think people are really kind of like, should I celebrate? Should I not? Am I allowed to celebrate? But we'll talk about a little bit about all of that. So we got to kind of start with history. And if you are in Daystar, if you're not in Daystar, you need to get in Daystar. But, Bishop always says, give me the background, right? Give me the background. And so the background on Juneteenth is we really have to go back, right? So we know in 1619, the first slave entered, was brought to the United States of America, right? And then we know if we kind of go a little bit further down the road, the 4th of July of 1776 is when the Declaration of Independence was signed. So those may be things that we learned, right? But we really don't talk about like what came in between. Well, the Civil War, right? And so people in the North, and if you're from the South, we probably have different accounts of what this actually was. But essentially, there were three main causes of the Civil War, and that was slavery, sectionalism, which is loyalty to a state or a lifestyle rather to an entire country, and then secession, right? The act of actively leaving the Union. And so the South was at that particular time you had two really fractions. The northern part of the United States, we had manufacturing. We, because I am from the north, my people from the south, but they have manufacturing and industry, right? Which was very different from the south. The south was primarily agriculture, and it became really important because that economy in the south depended on slavery. It depended on having people to be able to pick two main crops, really, and that is cotton and tobacco, right? And so there have been some tensions that were rising for a minute because the institution of slavery was trying to go out west, and then you had all of these different political acts or in the form of bills and different cases that were coming about, trying to come against slavery and trying to stop that westward expansion of slavery to the west. But the South was like, okay, but this is our economy, and they did not see slavery as much more than these are economics for us. This is how we are going to this is our property versus these are people. And southern states really felt like the North was trying to cut them off from that. So you have all that happening, right? Then in 1854, you have the birth of this Republican Party, which we now know today, which really was started because they were trying to stop the expansion of slavery. And who was their candidate? None other than Abraham Lincoln, which people are like, Abraham Lincoln, he like freed the slaves. Well, let's be clear. Okay. Abraham Lincoln has some very clear directives. He needed to bring the South, which had states like um, Texas and Florida and Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, who were saying, South Carolina, we're leaving. Bye. We don't want to be here anymore because we want to be able to do what we want to do, and y'all don't want that. And so President Lincoln's job when he was elected was to bring this union back together, right? But he knew that there was really only one way that he was going to be able to do it. So he threatened them first. He threatened those southern states and he said, "Come out of your rebellious state, right? Or I will free your slaves forever." Okay? And so they weren't going from Texas all across. They said, "We no, basically, we're not doing it." And that's when Lincoln had to get a little bit more radical, and he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which essentially freed most slaves, which we will talk about. And so this decision was really, really critical because not only did it hope to weaken the position of the Confederacy, the Southern states, but it also freed like 180,000 new people to come and fight for the Union, which was the North. And so all in all, it was this like win-win, right? And so people really thought a lot like, okay, so slavery's over, right? We done. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1862. Well, actually, emancipation did not come across because it wasn't sweeping, right? And so there were some places where that it did not hit. Texas was one of them because contrary to popular belief, while before the Proclamation, actually the Union, which is the North, were losing. They were losing a lot of the battles. And that Emancipation Proclamation kind of switched it on its gears, but it never quite got to Texas because Texas was a place that they were still winning. They were not. They were largely untouched by the Civil War, and as a matter of fact, you had a lot of slave owners from other states bringing their slaves to Texas so that they could be safe. So it was not until 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, when Gordon Granger he rode into Galveston, Texas, and issued General Order Number 3 on June 19th. And that is the order that gave um, basically said, hey, you all are free. I know what they're telling you, but you're free, right? And so while it's widely held that the Emancipation Proclamation actually freed slaves, that's not entirely true. The Emancipation Proclamation freed slaves from those states who were in a state of rebellion, right? So if your state was not included in that then you were actually able to still own slaves. It really wasn't until the 13th Amendment that slavery was outlawed in the United States, right? So there was still about 800,000 individuals who were not covered by the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay. And after that, we kind of know some of the other things that happened. So that's the history, right? So that's how we got to celebrating Juneteenth, which is why Juneteenth is widely celebrated and had been, I think, in 2002. A scholar found that there were over 200 celebrations of Juneteenth, right? And a lot of those celebrations took place in Texas and in California and in Oklahoma and those spaces because really, that information really had not traveled widely and over, right? And so how did it get to become a federal holiday? So there were organizers across the United States who were advocating for years and years for, Juneteenth to become a federal holiday. But it was not until after the murder of George Floyd and then widespread Black Lives Matter protests that one Republican senator, John Corwin of Texas, and Democratic Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, they passed the in the Senate first with no debate, and then it went to the House and there was a little debate, but they dropped it because it was like you in politics, you really want to pick what you want your battle to be, and Juneteenth was not what you wanted your battle to really be, and so eventually it passed with bipartisan support, and it was signed into law as a federal holiday of June of 2021. So that was last year. So, should we celebrate Juneteenth and 4th of July, or is it neither? Like, and so really the answer just Juneteenth symbolizes the end of slavery, and it serves as a historical milestone to remind Americans of the triumphant spirit, human spirit over the brutality of the institution of slavery, right? And so many African American, many Black people, I use the terms interchangeably celebrate both, right? There is an acknowledgement though that the 4th of July in that time, blacks were still not free, right? They were still not free. But I'm not gonna lie, growing up, I had a whole thing of sparklers. I had a fresh outfit. Me and my cousins had great gym shoes. We had no idea it was about the Declaration of Independence. For us, it was about getting together with our family and our people, barbecuing and seeing who made the potato salad, which is still an important question at most cookouts today. And so I think we have to kind of understand what it is to celebrate something, right? And so a celebration by definition is an observation of an occasion or occurrence which is in some way notable or important to the persons participating in it. Right? Holiday is a socially recognized day or period of days set aside to celebrate an important person or past event. And a festival is a period of communal celebration, often but not always centered around a holiday. So, can we celebrate? We absolutely can because we're celebrating the human spirit, the ability to triumph over such difficult and unimaginable situations, right? Which is probably why it's a little bit problematic for me when I hear people say, I am not, I'm not my ancestors. You not, because you couldn't get through slavery. You'd have been a goner. Okay. You're not, right? So we have to that is what it is to celebrate. Now, how do we celebrate? So there are a few ways that it has been celebrated traditionally now out west: rodeos, barbecues, fishing, baseball. But most important, Juneteenth was really an occasion to honor self-improvement and learning and growth, right? And so there are some foods because holidays, occasions, they center celebrations center around food, right? And a lot of those foods were typical of barbecues. They included barbecue, they include watermelon and red drinks. And I'm just gonna give you a little bit about why. And so when we look at barbecue and the meat that was prepared. It could be goat, it could be pork, it could be beef. It depended on the location and who was in that location. And really, the cuisine was based on the Africans who were in that area and what their customs and their traditions were, right? In terms of food. Um, and then from there, you have the color red, which some would say is really indicative of the blood that was shared through the transatlantic trip. But also, you have to just know that a lot of most enslaved Africans came from Western Africa, and a lot of the red foods also came from there as well. Now, there is this connection that is symbolized as red spirituality and strength and life and death. And so it doesn't always have to be so connected to a bloodshed, but it's also connected to strength and viability and resilience in a lot of ways. And so one of those is like a red drink. So it could be strawberry pop. There is something called the cola nut, and people would make drinks out of the cola nut, and then as well hibiscus, which is native to Africa, right? Which is something. And so it's usually a red drink, a punch, however you make it. And then there's watermelon, which there's a great debate over whether what part of Africa watermelon is from, but I think the agreement is that it is from Africa. Some say north, some say south, some say west. I'm not here to debate that. I'm just saying that watermelon, which in a lot of when we look at racist memorabilia, tends to kind of paint it as this like that, to dehumanize black people. But for real, we need to just kind of re take that back, because for real, watermelon was something that we grew as a people and we ate as a people, and it is delicious with a little salt on it, just how I eat it. I don't know how you, but and so these real three items, and really a lot of different rare foods. Red velvet is something that's newer, that's coming in. Strawberry pie. So people bring these into their celebrations, but really these celebrations are essentially cookouts with families, right? And it could be some other activities. My family we are a volleyball family, so we would play volleyball when we get together, right? And so you may even now find festivals, which is why I gave you the definition. Festivals which feature Black entrepreneurs and businesses, barbecue, food, fun, trivia. I'm going to one today. Um, and so I think that is fair to say that Juneteenth is an occasion that we can all celebrate, because it's about also having the knowledge of where it came from. And so once you have that knowledge, you can pass it on. We know that what we learn here really should share out to other folks so that they will know really why it's important that this is a federal holiday. So um, and then for me, it's a day of rest, right? So I work in Black Studies. See, I got a timer because Bishop told me 15 minutes. I work in Black Studies, and so I am a person that is absolutely committed to taking rest on this day. But I do want to thank you, Bishop, for giving me the time to kind of flesh some of this out. It's interesting. We are embarking at the center upon taking our students on a transatlantic experience where we take them to West Africa, to Barbados, and to South Carolina to learn about the transatlantic slave trade and those customs, right? And so I appreciate it. Thank you so much.